Hello everyone, I'm Colin Canet. Today I'm excited about this little project that we're doing because today we're going to be making some live edge plywood. So let's get going. So what I'm going to do today is take a natural board and cut off the live edge part of it and fasten that to a piece of plywood. But before we get started, there's some questions we need to answer. So the first question many of you will be asking is, why would you bother to do that? Why wouldn't you just use live edge wood? Well, there's a few answers, and one of them is that you might not have enough wood to do that with. And the other answer is you might want to be using plywood or MDF because it's nice and straight and flat. And in this case, I've got some oak plywood that I'm working with, but you could put together MDF and put together your own. For example, you might want to use walnut. Very easy. I already have a video or two on veneering. Veneering is a very simple way of making ordinary plain flat plywood and make it into your own oak, maple, figured maple. There's all sorts of different things that you could do. So there's lots of reasons why you might want to have a live edge piece of MDF, or in this case plywood. So let's first of all talk about live edge wood. Some people like to have the bark on their live edge. Some people like to have it off. And all the wood comes with bark on it. How you can determine what's going to happen to that bark is this. If the tree is cut down in the winter, the bark will stay on. If the tree is cut down in the spring or summer, the bark is going to fall off. And the way you can remember that is winter coat, so winter coat, winter bark, summer skin. In the summer, we don't have coats on, so the bark is going to fall off. That's a quick way of knowing what's going to happen to that bark. Now, you're probably going to want to do most of your prep work on your natural edge before you do any cutting. And the reason is because it's easier to work when it's bigger like this. So I've done everything with live edge wood. I've used steel brushes. I've used fine brushes in a drill. And both of these give you very fine little lines. They'll actually gouge out the wood and give you a fine texture. But it might be something some people like. Of course, there's sandpaper. And I also use a chisel. In fact, sometimes I'll use all of these items to prepare the edge. So there's no particular rule on what to use. You just kind of use whatever works. So now I have a nice flat piece of wood that I need to cut the strip off. That's the last thing that I'm going to do. I've got everything has been prepped now, and the last thing I'm going to do is cut off that little strip. There's a couple of ways that I can do that, and I'm going to put links at the end of the video. One for this one, what we call a patterning or templating fence. Some people call it an L fence. And I'm also going to put a link to another jig that you can use that I also use for tapered legs and also for cutting irregular wood on the side. But for this side, for this size, I'm going to be using this one. And the way this works is this. First of all, I'm going to roll the blade all the way down. I've got a little thin piece of plywood, and what I want to do is I want to set the fence here. I'm just going to drop it right on there. Make sure that's down on both sides and just lock it into place. And it's using these, it's locked to the top of my fence here, and it's using those mag switches. So that's how that's attached. Now, the next thing I need to do is to raise the blade up so that it just nicely is above, let's do it this way, nicely above the material. There. What I'm going to do is align this board with that line that I just made. But before I do that, what I like to do is I like to use this anti-skid material. It really works well, and it makes sure that I don't slip. Now, the other thing that you could do, you could put some nails through there, or some air nails, some tacks through there to tack that. But I've found that the anti-skid material works just as well as anything. So there we go. There's my live edge piece of wood. Now there's a couple of things once you get to this point. First of all, if I touch the wood on this side and one, you can see that there's a big gap in the middle here. But don't worry about that, because look at this. This wood, when it's this small, it'll flex back and forth, it'll flex up and down, there's lots of movement there, so you usually don't have to worry about that. And if your wood was straight when you cut it, in many cases it'll just come off straight. Because I'm working with plywood here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to lay a thin skin of glue down on here, and I'm going to let it sit for about 15 minutes and soak in, and then when I come back we'll put a thin strip of glue on here and we'll clamp that down. I'll show you how I'm going to do that. Okay, that glue that I put on the plywood, it's a tiny bit tacky, but that's okay. It's mostly dry. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put a thin layer, because I really don't want any squeeze out on this. So I'm just going to put a thin layer on my wood here. So, okay, now I'm just going to lay that on there for starters and line up this side. Now here's the trick. I'm just going to use this painter's tape, and this is going to work just amazingly well. Not only does it sort of help you line up the edge, now all the way along, the next thing I'm going to do now, and this is going to make it really strong, I'm just going to lay this tape down. I'm going to take that and see how easy that aligns. It's just amazing. It's just like magic. So it clamps it down and it aligns it at the same time. Okay, so I've left these overnight, and that's on there nice and firm now. So I'm just going to take all my clamping tape off. Well, there's that natural edge on there on our piece of plywood here, and that is attached on there very, very strongly. So I would have no problem working with this whatsoever. But people that are working with sheet goods like plywoods and MDF, those sort of woods, this just opens up a whole new world of woodworking, because now you can emulate a natural edge wood and still have sort of as wide a wood and as long a wood as you want with a plywood or an MDF. Very stable. It doesn't have the same wood movement that you would get with natural woods. Very strong, stays nice and flat, and of course you have the ability of purchasing plywoods and MDFs with different veneers on them, so you can make all sorts of different things. So, and there is a few things that I'm not going to cover off here. For example, what you might want to do with some edge treatments, lots of little things like that, maybe some coloration if you need to match some colors. I'm going to talk about those in the article on Woodwork Web, so if it's something that you are interested in doing and you want to learn more about it, that's where I'll detail some of the detail. For today, I really just wanted to show you what is possible to do and how natural it can look. Well, that concludes my video for today, how to make live edge plywood, and just another option for those people that like to work with sheet goods. I'm Colin Canet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.